about Astro World
Okay.
because I watched your video about that today. I had no idea what had happened until last night. I saw. So, as someone who I listen to a lot of hardcore metal stuff like that, and I've been to quite a few heavy shows. At the end of September, I went to a festival called Furnace Fest. It was supposed to be a one-time revival of this festival that happened in like the early 2000s when the scene was absolutely insane. Just a bunch of scrappy, sweaty dudes throwing a show together at this like old historical. I think it's like a furnace or something like that's why they call it Furnace Fest. At this historical location in Birmingham. They're going to be doing it again next year. I'm really excited. But I went there. You have like 15,000 people there every single day, right? I mean, you got to think the headliners for the 3 days that the festival happened was night one was Under Oath, one of the biggest like metalcore bands ever, formerly Christian band. You have Taking Back Sunday was Saturday. It's a massive like emo band from the 2000s. And then Sunday night was Killswitch Engage, which is another really big metalcore band, as well as right before them was August Burns Red, which is one of my favorite bands. They're massive. It's crazy that I thought about was like, so I'm at this show, I've gone to other heavy shows, and I think metalcore, hardcore has a very violent reputation. Like a lot of people, when you're like, oh, I'm going to a metal show, they're like, oh, okay, like come back with double black eyes. But it's not like that. You know what I mean? Like, yes, you have intoxicated people, you have overzealous idiots, but like they either get checked or they get kicked out typically. We don't, it's just the culture is so different where it's like, if you fall in the pit, like they will stop and help you back up. Like, I don't really get into the mosh pits that much because I wear glasses. It's just not a good combination.
Right.
But sometimes I'm on the edge, my glasses get knocked off. People are very quick to pick it up, give it back to me. I mean, I've seen people who their backpacks get ripped open, their merch goes flying everywhere. People hand them their stuff back. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it's just so crazy to me that you have this genre of music that has this very violent reputation to people. And yet, like, yeah, there's injuries on sometimes, of course, but they really do take care of each other.
Yeah. Is that because the scene is smaller? Is that because it's more independent, less major labels and corporations involved? I'll give you the answers to Astroworld. I think what happened with Astroworld and what happens of those types of situations is, I think when we did the handful of shows we did at the church way back, and I was loosely involved. I think it was running sound. I don't remember what I did. I just remember being at them like, what is this? And it was wild. But I remember there being this caution, and I remember there being this reverence that if we screw this up, we're not gonna get to do any more shows.
Yeah.
We're not gonna get to do any more shows at this church.
Yeah.
And if we screw this up and someone really gets hurt, we're not gonna get to do any more shows in the region and potentially in the county. So there was this reverence and respect for how they threw those shows, and even some of the kids would get rowdy. But like you said, there was always somebody ready to check somebody. The bands would always stop the shows if somebody really got hurt or anything like. And thankfully, no one ever got hurt. Like no one. I've seen more people hurt at rap shows. I've seen more rappers hurt themselves at rap shows than I've seen kids in a mosh pit hurt themselves, outside of like a bloody nose or something like that, right?
I also don't know why they mosh at rap shows. I don't know who started that, but it's funny to me every time I hear it.
Well, so I think the answer, in my opinion, is that I don't know if Travis Scott had to pull his way out of the mud in the same way these bands are coming from the mud and doing every little show they did. I mean, clearly he had a start at some point, but it seems like his rise was fairly explosive and fast. And I think when that happens that fast, then you can really just jump on some like goofy rock star, we just gonna do what we want, rock and roll, sex, drugs, you know what I mean, turn up. I think that's why. I think there hasn't been that like, hey, this is small, and because it's small, it's delicate, and if we screw this up, it's a wrap, and it could be a wrap for the whole county, you know, like it could be a wrap, like we messed this up and it's all bad. And I think that to me is and so when you're looking at a pop level, right, like they don't give a crap, like it's about you know, hey, don't, like I remember them saying. The camera guys wouldn't stop the show because they were streaming. Oh, we're streaming, we can't stop. And he didn't want to stop the show because he thought that they would riot. And that to me is like the most pansy, weak thing I've ever heard from an artist. Like, bro, that is your show. You get to dictate how that show goes. It's literally your festival. It's not just your set at a festival. It's your festival. You get to dictate how that goes, and you get to dictate what energy puts out there, and you get to make sure that people are safe. You don't, oh, if I stop my set, they're gonna riot. No, they're rioting. They're rioting right now. Stop the freaking show, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's just it's a lack of grind to build up to 50,000 at a festival. In my opinion, Travis started very early on doing festivals, small stage, but he's already at festival. He signed to T.I. He's working with Kanye. So I think what happens is when guys work their way up, one, their shows aren't as good, and two, there's less of a regard for having to pay the dues and work your way up and get your set better, and you know what I mean, and put that grind in. And I think with metal, it's the total opposite. There is no as I lay dying shouts me out, and then I'm a megastar in the metal. Like, it doesn't work that way. Like, you got to go through these clubs. You got to get your set dope. You got to work your way out. And that's one of the things about hip hop that's always been interesting, is how trash a lot of the shows are. Like guys can have platinum records before they ever do a show. You know, and so guess what happens when they go do a show? It's terrible, and they don't understand protocol, and they don't understand that like people are gonna get rowdy, and you have to be the master of that ceremony as an MC, and so I think it's some of that. I don't want to make it like hip hop is bad type of thing, but I think it's just a lack of It's just hip hop is an interesting genre in that like you can literally become a platinum selling artist like off of a laptop in your bedroom. And never see a show until you're at Lollapalooza or Coachella. And that's a weird dynamic for music in general. Like, that's a crazy dynamic. And so I think that's more or less like Travis Scott didn't have to throw his own local shows in his own town and build relationships with venues and learn how to rage, but do it he didn't have to do that. Like, but for someone that's been doing this for 20 years, doing metal shows at Bringle Terrace Park, where they hired me to go and throw shows, and I had to, build a set where a rap group, and then a rock group, and then a metal group, and then a ska group, right? And I built these things like we've been doing this stuff for so long that like I'm looking at it like, bro, this is common sense, like. But again, not everybody's coming up the same way, right? Like, because he had certain luxuries, and this is where I think that verse in Proverbs, like an inheritance obtained too early in life is not a blessing in the end. A lot of these guys work their faces off to get the little bit of acclaim, and you got guys like Travis Scott, who I think is artistically cool, but I don't think it's that groundbreaking. Like, I think the clout and the quality of music doesn't match up to me, and it's because of all these other variables: the Kanye cosign, the Kylie Jenner thing, all the Nike Jordan collab, all these other things make him seem way more genius than he really is. Yeah. And that's how he's able to pull 50,000 people without the character and without the infrastructure and without the experience of like throwing festivals. And now you're pulling these massive audiences. And so, hey man, at some point something's going to give. Yeah. I don't know. I think it's interesting, but I do think that there's a lot that hip hop, independent hip hop, Christian hip hop can learn from the metal scene. And I don't know how that plays in, because I do think that sometimes rapper kids tend to really be about the clout and the hype, and less about like, do I objectively like this? Like, do I think the music is objectively good? Or is it just because everyone else says it's good, and therefore I have my anchoring bias that so-and-so said this was good, and now I'm a fan of all these artists that are kind of mediocre artists, if we're going to be honest, right? So I don't know. Like, I've always thought Travis Scott's music to me was just like meh. It's just meh, And I would get into arguments with producers and rappers, and like, no, you don't understand, bro. It's a vibe. And I'm like, I don't think it's as dope as you think it is. Like, I think it's okay, but it sounds meh, And so I internally, I get arguments with guys in my own community. Like, y'all are gassing these guys up. I don't think it's that dope. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's that good. Now there are guys like I think a Juice WRLD was one of those kids that was just freakishly talented.
I really like Juice WRLD.
Yeah, and his ability to freestyle, and his ability to, the stuff he was doing was so brilliant to me, because he was one of those guys that could really rap and make the emo rap thing. But again, what happened? A bunch of kids enabled that music, knowing that he was really struggling behind the scenes.
Destroying himself, yeah.
And when you consume that, you're a part of the problem, in my opinion. This is just my humble opinion. If you know somebody's struggling on heroin and you keep buying their product, you're putting more heroin, you're giving them access to more heroin. Like, that is what that is, you know? And so it's like, I think there's this very weird cognitive bias where we try to separate art from the artist. And I don't think we should do that. Like, if somebody has a problem, man, you gotta separate, like, what are you supporting and what are you endorsing with your dollars? Because, by the way, all these labels, Christian, non-Christian, secular, major, rap, indie, major, whatever, at the end of the day, they're strictly looking at the analytics. Who's getting the clicks? Who has the hype? That's where they're gonna go after, and that's where they're gonna put their money behind. And if this is the stuff that keeps getting the clicks and keeps making it on these playlists, and they're looking at the skip rates, and if whatever, throw up a big playlist like Rap Caviar, and they're looking at the playlist, and if the most debaucherous, wild stuff is getting the replays and getting the ads, guess what? That's what they're gonna keep putting out there, right? And so I think that's where. Less about like there's a spirit. I do think there's some demonic stuff that happens, but less about that. It's just a practicality of like, hey, if we want to be in this world and not of this world, we have to understand how this world works, and it's strictly going off of capitalism. And unfortunately, lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, that is what's going to sell. So if you're a Christian and you're saying you're consistently like Travis Scott is the soundtrack for your life, like, that's weird to me. That's weird. Like, if you're saying you're devoted to Jesus, and the primary vehicle of soundtrack and music to your life is Travis Scott and Lil Nas X and Lil Uzi Vert because of the vibes, like, nah, fam, that's mad incongruent. Like, that's mad incongruent from saying you're a follower of Jesus to being a follower of Jesus. And again, it's not to like draw hard lines, because there are people that just check out stuff like, yo, I'm an artist, I'm just gonna check this out, you know? So anyway, man, that's a great question. I think there's a lot of parallels there, and I think there's some really interesting things to unpack in terms of these different worlds and stuff. So thank you so much for being here. Hey, if you want to call in next time, partner with us on Patreon, and we will chat more. Thank you so much. I appreciate everybody being here. Y'all have a good one, all right?
Kingstream Entertainment. Ruslan.
Hey, thank you so much for making it till the end of this video. Remember to hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed. I wanted to tell you about a free upcoming course I am putting together at mastermyhabits.com. When you sign up right now, you'll be the first to be notified about the course. And in the meantime, you'll immediately get access to a playlist going over my journey on how I went from addiction to freedom forming habits. So make sure to hit that link in the description. I'll see you on the next video.